In the last video, we learnt about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Today I will move on to the succession, with a focus on both the authority to interpret the revealed truth of the Quran and rule over the territories conquered during the Prophet's lifetime. The Islamic Empire, or Caliphate, became one of the greatest polities of the medieval period and achieved great intellectual accomplishments, especially in the field of mathematics. Questions over who Muhammad's rightful heir was still divide the Muslim world today and caused the religion to split into Sunni and Shia sects. Muhammad left behind no male heir, but was survived by 4 daughters, one of whom was called Fatima and also married to his cousin Ali. According to Shia Muslims, that means he is the legitimate successor of the Prophet. However, Sunnis believe that Muhammad's close companion Abu Bakr, the first caliph, was the right choice. The split between those who favoured Ali and those who preferred Abu Bakr was not immediately sectarian in nature. Each side fundamentally agreed on much, and Muhammad's death in 632 did not spark an instant crisis. The title of caliph, out of which comes Caliphate, literally means successor, and while comparable to the Christian Pope, does not claim to be the representative of God on earth. His role, and it has to be a he, was also more explicitly temporal versus the binding and loosing of Peter. Muhammad was also the last prophet, so they could not succeed him in this role. Therefore, practical considerations were of high importance, especially the suitability of the caliph to rule over an expanding, sprawling empire. Much of the debate was concerned about the nature of authority rather than tracing bloodlines or legalistic claims. Legitimacy was a key factor, and whether this was conferred by familial ties, tradition, competence, or spiritual kinship was the topic of debate. Tensions between Sunnis and Shiites only began to resemble the ferocity of today's conflicts after the so-called martyrdom of Hussein, the grandson of Muhammad, in 680. Hussein was killed at the Battle of Karbala, which was fought between himself and the caliph at the time, Yazid I. As the last living link to the Prophet Muhammad, his death is a pivotal moment for Shia Muslims and has formed a crucial part of Shiite identity. Shia Muslims are in the minority today, and from that time practiced dissimulation under the caliph, whereby they outwardly remained loyal but inwardly held the successor illegitimate. For Sunnis, the scholars have the authority to interpret the Quran, but Shiites believe that only imams who are descended from the Prophet have this right. Divisions in the Middle East today reflect this historical split in Islam. Iraq, Iran, and Lebanon have Shia majorities, and the Gulf countries of Qatar and Saudi Arabia are majority Sunni. However, modern sectarianism was only unleashed after the First World War, when the former Ottoman Empire was carved up between the British and the French, without regard to ethnic and religious divisions, of which the plight of the Kurds is living proof. Although the Middle East seems like a violent place from our contemporary perspective, the sects get along much better than Catholics and Protestants of the early modern period's wars of religion. The region went through a relatively stable, if highly undemocratic period in the post-Second World War era, when the dictatorships of Assad in Syria, Hussein in Iraq, and Gaddafi in Libya emerged. Their secular regimes sought to unite the Arab world under the ideology of Baathism, but this was destroyed by the 2003 Iraq War and the 2011 Arab Spring mass movement, which removed dictators but left a power vacuum behind that was filled by religious fanatics and theocrats, or, as in Libya, not substituted with anything. Under Muhammad, all Arabia was conquered. His immediate predecessors took northern Egypt and Libya, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, and Lebanon, and Iran, plus parts of modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. By the mid-8th century, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia were added, plus most of Iberia, and even the southern fringe of France. This vast territory was called the Caliphate, and was a huge multi-ethnic empire. The Sassanid Empire collapsed, and the Persians converted from Zarathustrianism to Islam, while the Byzantine Empire lost all its southern provinces. The conquest drive was motivated by religion, but there were no mass conversions or a desire to eliminate either Christianity or Judaism, and Muslims remained in the minority in most areas initially. At this point, the distinctiveness of Islam was not yet worked out or articulated versus the Nicene Creed of the Christians under Constantine. It didn't help that there was internal division at the time between Sunni and Shiite factions. The line of succession was not clear, only that the Caliph was to combine religious and secular rule. In some sense, the early Muslims stumbled upon conquest as a way of life. They began by raiding cities and retreating to the desert before things got dangerous, where their adversaries could not follow. As they became more and more successful at this, they turned to more permanent gains. Thus, plunder developed into expansion, and the Muslims were able to take advantage of the Persian-Byzantine interstate conflicts to establish rule over large swathes of both territories. Muslim thinkers made great advances in the field of mathematics during the 8th century. They developed algebra and algorithms to solve problems, motivated by a religious duty to seek knowledge. To some extent, they were building on the work already existing in the region, such as the Babylonians of modern-day Iraq, where cities of around 60,000 people gave rise to complex logistical problems, and from whom we get 360 degrees of a circle. The Indian contribution also fed into Islamic mathematics, with its early obsession with large numbers, which it needed to measure the heavens. It was also influenced by Persian culture, which valued texts and books, and the Muslims began a great translation drive of Greek works. The impetus to intellectual excellence was spurred partly by Mohammed's hadith that it was every Muslim's duty to seek knowledge. The Muslims drew heavily from the mathematics of the Greeks, especially Pythagoras and Euclid, and they developed algorithms to solve problems of geometry and proportional taxation, and added decimal fractions to the base 10 system.